On a moonless night, a lone figure approached the crumbling facade of Weatherly Hospital. Sarah, a young journalist with a passion for unraveling mysteries, had been drawn to the abandoned building by rumors of strange happenings. As she stepped through the broken doorway, the air grew heavy with the scent of decay. The dim light from her flashlight cast long shadows on the cracked walls, and the silence was suffocating. Sarah's footsteps echoed through the empty corridors as she explored the deserted hospital. Each room held a piece of the past, from rusted medical equipment to faded photographs on the walls. But as she delved deeper into the building, Sarah sensed a presence lurking in the shadows. Whispers brushed against her ears, too faint to make out, yet filled with an undeniable urgency. Ignoring the growing unease in her gut, Sarah pressed on, determined to uncover the truth behind the hospital's abandonment. She had almost reached the end of the hallway when she heard a soft, plaintive cry echoing from somewhere deep within the building. Heart pounding, Sarah followed the sound, her flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon. It led her to a forgotten wing of the hospital, where a heavy door stood slightly ajar. With trembling hands, Sarah pushed the door open and stepped into the room beyond. What she saw made her blood run cold. A row of empty beds, their sheets stained with dried blood, and a single figure standing in the center of the room. As Sarah approached, the figure turned to face her, its eyes empty sockets staring into the void. It reached out a hand, fingers curling like claws, and whispered a name that sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Meanwhile, in the heart of the town, a group of teenagers gathered at the local diner. Among them was Alex, a thrill-seeker with a penchant for the supernatural. When Sarah's article about the abandoned hospital had appeared in the local newspaper, he knew he had to investigate. "Come on, guys," Alex said, excitement bubbling in his voice. "We have to check out the hospital tonight. Who's with me?" His friends exchanged nervous glances, but one by one, they nodded their agreement. They had heard the rumors about Weatherly Hospital, the stories of ghostly apparitions and unexplained disappearances, but they were determined not to let fear hold them back. As they made their way to the hospital, the night grew darker, and the forest loomed closer, casting long shadows across the road. The air was thick with anticipation as they approached the abandoned building, its broken windows staring out like empty eye sockets. With a sense of trepidation, the group entered the hospital, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. They split up to explore, each venturing into the darkness alone. But as they wandered deeper into the building, they began to sense a presence watching them from the shadows. Whispers brushed against their ears, sending shivers down their spines, and the air grew colder with each passing moment. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the silence, echoing through the corridors like a primal cry of terror. The group froze in horror, their hearts pounding in their chests, as they realized the scream had come from one of their own. Back in the abandoned wing of the hospital, Sarah stood face to face with the figure in the center of the room. Its hollow eyes bored into hers, and she felt a chill creep down her spine as it whispered her name. "Who are you?" Sarah asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. The figure tilted its head to one side, as if considering her question, before speaking in a voice that seemed to come from beyond the grave. "We are the Forgotten Ones," it said, its words echoing through the room like a mournful lament. "Trapped between worlds, bound by a curse that cannot be broken." Sarah's heart raced as she listened to the figure's words, her mind reeling with disbelief. But before she could respond, the figure reached out a hand and touched her forehead, sending a jolt of electricity coursing through her veins. In an instant, Sarah was overcome by a vision of a young girl lying on a hospital bed, her face pale and drawn, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. She could feel the girl's fear and desperation, as if it were her own, and she knew in that moment that she had to help her. With a renewed sense of purpose, Sarah turned to leave the abandoned wing of the hospital, but as she stepped through the doorway, she felt a sudden chill run down her spine. The figure was gone, and in its place stood a swirling vortex of darkness, beckoning her into its depths. Meanwhile, in the heart of the town, Alex and his friends searched frantically for their missing companion. They called out her name, their voices echoing through the empty corridors of the hospital, but there was no response. As they ventured deeper into the building, they stumbled upon the abandoned wing where Sarah had encountered the mysterious figure. The air grew colder with each step they took, and they could feel a sense of unease creeping over them like a shadow. Suddenly, they heard a soft whispering coming from the darkness ahead, a whispering that seemed to call out to them, urging them to come closer. With a sense of trepidation, they followed the sound, their footsteps echoing through the empty corridors. But as they rounded a corner, they came face to face with a sight that filled them with horror, a swirling vortex of darkness, pulsating with an otherworldly energy. And at its center stood Sarah, her eyes glazed over, her body trembling as if possessed. "Sarah, snap out of it," Alex cried, rushing forward to grab her hand. But as he touched her, he felt a surge of electricity course through his veins, and he recoiled in pain. With a sinking feeling, Alex realized that Sarah was not herself, that she had been consumed by the darkness that lurked within the abandoned hospital. And as he looked into her empty eyes, he knew that he would do whatever it took to save her. With time running out, Alex and his friends raced against the clock to break the curse that had trapped Sarah within the darkness of the abandoned hospital. They searched frantically for a way to destroy the vortex and free her from its grip, but every path they took seemed to lead them deeper into the heart of the darkness. Finally, they stumbled upon a forgotten staircase leading down into the depths below. With a sense of dread gnawing at their insides, they descended into the darkness, their flashlights cutting through the shadows like beacons of hope. At the bottom of the staircase, they found themselves in a vast underground chamber, its walls lined with ancient symbols and arcane markings. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, upon which rested a gleaming dagger, its blade shimmering with an otherworldly light. As Alex approached the pedestal, he felt a surge of power coursing through his veins, and he knew in that moment what he had to do. With a steady hand, he grasped the dagger and raised it high above his head, ready to strike the final blow. But as he prepared to strike, a voice echoed through the chamber, a voice filled with sorrow and regret, yet tinged with a glimmer of hope. "Do not do this, Alex," the voice said, and as Alex turned to face its source, he saw the figure of a young girl standing before him, her eyes filled with tears. "We are not your enemies," the girl said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "We are the Forgotten Ones, trapped between worlds by a curse that cannot be broken. But with your help, we can finally find peace." With a heavy heart, Alex lowered the dagger, his mind reeling with uncertainty. Could it be true? Could the spirits of the abandoned hospital be redeemed instead of destroyed? As he pondered these questions, a sense of clarity washed over him, and he knew what he had to do. With a determined look in his eyes, he turned to his friends and nodded, his resolve firm. Together, they joined hands and chanted the ancient incantation that would break the curse and set the spirits free. And as they spoke the final words, a blinding light filled the chamber, illuminating the darkness and banishing the shadows once and for all. When the light faded, Alex and his friends found themselves standing in the heart of the abandoned hospital, surrounded by the spirits of the Forgotten Ones. But this time, the spirits were not filled with anger and despair, they were filled with gratitude and hope. With tears in their eyes, the spirits thanked Alex and his friends for freeing them from their eternal torment, and as they faded back into the darkness, a sense of peace settled over the abandoned hospital, banishing the darkness that had plagued it for so long. And as Alex and his friends emerged from the hospital into the light of the rising sun, they knew that they had faced their fears and emerged victorious. For they had not only saved Sarah from the darkness, they had also brought peace to the restless spirits that haunted the abandoned hospital, and in doing so, they had found the courage to confront the darkness within themselves.